Well, I started studying in, would have been, let's see, I went to Stuttgart in Tübingen, Baden-Württemberg in 82.
Yeah.
And I graduated high school in 78. So 78, I started college. 79, I started studying in Eugene.
Okay.
So I'd been studying for a couple of years in Eugene. And then they had this exchange program, and my cousin, the same cousin Rhonda, who turned me on to the Beatles and the Monkees and the Kiss, was taking a German class when we were kids. We were little kids, and she was in high school already. And I'm like, what's up with that? She's like, I just wanted to learn a foreign language. I was like, that's weird. I said, and then I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn German because guess what? Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Schumann, Schubert, all like that's the beginning of modern music,
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu Der Soundtrack meines Lebens. Ich bin Jan Schwarzkamp und ich werde euch in diesem Podcast auf eine musikalische Reise mitnehmen. Eine durch das tönende und klingende Leben meiner Gäste. Mal nerdig, mal erhellend, immer persönlich. Ein Austausch über Popkultur im Allgemeinen und ein Blick aufs Leben durch die Linse der Musik im Speziellen. Viel Spaß mit der folgenden Episode. Zu Gast in dieser Episode von Der Soundtrack meines Lebens ist Page Hamilton. Geboren wird Page Nye Hamilton im Mai 1960 in Portland, Oregon und wächst in Medford auf. In eben diesem Bundesstaat studiert er Gitarre, um dann für seinen Jazzmaster nach New York zu ziehen. Dort beginnt er im Avantgarde-Orchester von Glenn Branca zu spielen. Zwischenzeitlich verschlägt es Hamilton als Austauschstudent 1983 auch nach Stuttgart. Deshalb kann er bis heute einige Brocken Deutsch. In den 80ern, da schließt er sich der Band of Susans an und gründet 1989 Helmet, die harten Rock zwischen Alternative Metal, Post-Hardcore und Noise Rock spielen. Zwischen 1990 und 2023 veröffentlicht er mit der Band 9 Alben. Parallel arbeitet er an Soundtracks und produziert gelegentlich. Außerdem ist Hamilton kurzzeitig David Bowies Live-Gitarrist. Eine Zeit lang in den 90ern ist Hamilton sogar in einer Beziehung mit Schauspielerin Winona Ryder. Ja. Wenn er nicht mit Helmet tourt, dann spielt er auch mal Jazz mit dem Page Hamilton Quintett oder den Jazz Wannabes. Oder er gibt Unterricht aus seinem Heimstudio in Los Angeles heraus. Das und vieles andere möchte ich gerne hier mit ihm vertiefen im Backstage-Bereich des Astra Kulturhauses in Berlin-Friedrichshain. Hier werden Helmet heute Abend ein Konzert spielen. Im Mittelpunkt das 30-jährige Jubiläum ihres 94er-Albums Betty. Und jetzt freue ich mich sehr, Page Hamilton hier in der Soundtrack meines Lebens willkommen zu heißen. Guten Tag, Page. Schön, dass du da bist.
Dankeschön, ja. Schön da zu sein. Gut, dich wieder zu sehen. Wir haben uns, was war das, vor einem Monat oder etwas gesehen?
Ich glaube, es sind 6 Monate, sowas.
6 Monate, schon, okay. Ja. Was weiß ich.
Ja.
Okay. Cool.
Page, what is your earliest musical memory that you can remember?
With my cousins, Rhonda and Carrie, in the Dalles, Oregon, in their basement. They played us the Monkees and the Beatles' Rubber Soul and Kiss Alive and Jim Croce. And I remember just thinking this was just the greatest thing ever. And I just was and at the time we were kids. They were older than us, so they were like big sisters to us, the three of us, my brother and sister and I.
Yeah.
And we looked up to them, and I felt like the Beatles and the Monkees were equal, like two really great bands. When you're 10 years old or 9 years old or whatever. This would have been in the late 60s, early 70s. And and that's we listened to music, we danced, and we played air guitar. We had a blast. It just was it brought us joy. My cousin's parents, Annie Wanda and Uncle Ron, had a piano upstairs, and they would play the Green Beret song, or they would they taught me how to play heart and soul. So one person would play one part and one person would play the other part on the piano, and I just was drawn to it. I thought it was so cool, and that would be my first memory.
But were you born into a music family? Were your parents listening to music actively?
My mom sang in the choir in church, and she loved it. She had a piano, and we had a piano in our house. It was horribly out of tune, so she would try to play kind of a little bit, but and my mom claimed that I got my musical ability from her side of the family. So it's possible, because my father he liked music. They listened to music, but it was for parties when they would have friends over, and it was this joyous occasion. It was always jazz, like Dixieland jazz and stuff like that. So in the house they would play original Dixieland jazz band. They would play. What was it? The Brothers Four, I think it was called, or something like that. They Puff the Magic Dragon, and I always knew that when they were having friends over and they were going to have a party, they were in a good mood and they were having cocktails and putting music on. But it was usually sort of Dixieland jazz stuff. And they also my mom loved Ella Fitzgerald and George Shearing. So they would listen to music, but music was a background thing for them.
But did radio play any role in your household?
Did
was
what?
There a radio? Was there a radio in the kitchen or something?
No, we had radio in the car.
Yeah.
It was AM radio. So it was all those, growing up in the 70s, there was all that amazing music on the radio. Just these like really underrated musicians. It was before there was Pro Tools and stuff could be pitch corrected and time corrected, and they had to play and sing these parts. So there, we had a really cheap Radio Shack stereo, and in fact, my father sent me under the house and the crawl space in the house, and he gave me a wire, and he knocked on the living room floor. He's like, over here, so he drilled through, and I had to crawl under all the way the entire length of the house and feed the wire up to him so he could run the speakers underneath the house, the speaker wire. It was hilarious.
But it's pretty cool. I mean,
I know. Dad was pretty high tech.
Yeah,
I know. So we could have music in the living room or the family room. Those were the two rooms. And when I was a teenager in high school and smoking weed, I worked a job at a restaurant, and I would come home, and there were the turntable was on it was a realistic, it was called. It was on a little tray that would pull out, and so I could put the headphones would reach the receiver, and I could lay on the couch stoned and listen to the Tubes and Rush. I remember that pretty clearly, laying on the couch and hearing stereo. In the 70s, the stereo experience, 60s and 70s, with Hendrix and all that stuff, the stereo experience was so much, in my opinion, kind of better, just the way the albums were mixed. Yeah. I'm on a 70s kick right now. Yeah. I've been listening to bands of my youth, my childhood, like America and Bread. That was the first album that was purchased for me. Bread, Manna, Rod Stewart, and then what was the other one? Ambrosia. And it's just so interesting to hear how they mix those albums. Yeah. They'd have like a guitar solo on the far left, vocals in the center. Vocals in the center. Bass. There was bass and a solo on this song I was listening to last night. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep, so I was up listening to music late at night. And it's just interesting. It was just, I thought that was kind of for me in an odd way, the heyday. Yeah. I feel lucky that I grew up in that era, and there were so many great bands and great musicians. Because as I said, people had to really play their instruments.
I'd always say that the music back in the day had kind of more soul because it was so analog. It sounded warm. Stereo was a new invention, so you could really experiment with it.
Yeah.
But it was not overdone yet. It was not
Yeah.
like too many layers. They really kept it.
Yeah. No, there's I have so many fond memories. Another early memory, I was a car sick kid. I get motion sick, and we had a station wagon, as all families in America did in 1971 or whatever. And my mom and dad were up front, and my brother and sister were in the middle seat behind mom and dad, and I was in the very back because I was feeling car sick. And we had the radio on in the car, and the song by America called "Horse with No Name" came on.
Yeah.
And I closed my eyes and I just went inside the music. Something happened, something clicked. I realized there were all these different instruments happening, and there was this imagery being painted, and it was just this perfect song.
Yeah.
And I know people have given them shit about the lyrics, but I love it. I think it's just one of the greatest songs ever, and it changed my life. It kind of was the beginning of me starting to think about music from an analytical standpoint, from an intellectual, like analyze things and figure things out, not just listen to it. I knew it brought me joy, but I wanted to know why.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know how they did it, how they created that, and that's to this day has served me very well.
Lou Barlow, from the bass player from Dinosaur Jr., he once told me that he loved A Horse with No Name by America.
Yeah.
And then later on, he heard Neil Young for the first time, and then he was like, oh, Neil Young is totally ripping off America. And later on realizing, oh, maybe it was like vice versa.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny.
But America worked with George Martin, if I'm not wrong, the Beatles producer.
Not on their first two albums, but on Hearts and on Holiday.
Okay.
He was a huge Tin Man, Lonely People, Sister Golden Hair. Those songs are all produced by George, and he played keyboards on most of that stuff. I mean, Jerry Beckley could play piano, but George played a lot of the keyboard parts on those albums. Yeah.
You are actually old enough that at some point during the 60s, you must have been aware that a band named The Beatles are the shit. When was that? Was there a point where you realized, like, this is for the young, this is for the youth, this is something different that hasn't been there before? Because, I mean, there was such huge hype about the Beatles.
I didn't, as I said, my first musical memories are with my cousins, Rhonda and Carrie, and the Beatles and Monkees were equal, because I didn't know that the Monkees that was the Wrecking Crew, and those are all studio musicians like Glenn Campbell and Hal Blaine and those amazing players. So I thought they were great, but it wasn't until I got a little older, in fact, quite a bit later, like probably college, where I kind of went, like, had this light bulb go off, and I was like, holy crap, wow, this is, and this would have been I started college in 1978 at University of Oregon, and that's when I really realized, wow, this is something else. And I go and over the last, so what is it, 88, 98, 2008, how many years is that? 40 years ago almost. Every couple of years I go through a massive Beatles kick, that's all I can listen to for like a month. It happens. It's happened for 40 years.
That might explain why Helmet covered on their 2010 record Seeing Eye Dog the song And Your Bird Can Sing, maybe. It's kind of a weird idea to find that song on a Helmet album.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't even sound like Helmet, but you play it pretty close to the original. Why did that song end up on the album? What was the idea behind that? And does that Beatles song have a special place in your heart?
I love all four guys. I will never see another band with four pop musicians with that level of genius ever again. And but Lennon had his vocal range and vocal delivery and kind of the rasp in his voice was closer to my kind of rasp. My voice is lower. I'm a baritone technically, but I just related to the song, and it stands out from all their other songs to me with the harmonized guitar parts. Everybody talks about Iron Maiden and then before them Thin Lizzy and stuff, and of course they're the amazing harmonized guitar parts. But the Beatles were doing that, in 1966. So it's. I just think it's so. They had such a grasp of harmony. It's because those two parts. I think George and John, they're at points they're playing sixth, and just the way the lines move, it's E major basically, but just the way the lines move is so interesting, and how they came up with that. It's not 100% parallel harmony. In other words, they're not just harmonizing, going, here's the lead line, we're going to put a note a third above it or a third below it. They didn't do that. And I just think, and I love how his voice strains, and it's so emotional, and song still blows my mind. Revolver's if I have to pick a favorite Beatles album, it's probably Revolver. It's such a masterpiece. I mean,
it seems to me that you are a very analytical listener to music, right? I mean, can you listen to a song without analyzing it?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's interesting. Bowie said something to me when I was playing with him. He said, it's like, what you're doing sounds very random and free, but it's actually very thought out and worked out. And I'm like, yeah, I think through things, and I go, I can have option A, B, or C, and you can choose A, B, or C at any given time. You don't have to play A all the time. This idea, and I think, like, for me, when I listen to music, I want to know, the chords. I want to know. I listen to the harmonies and stuff, but I'm not transcribing everything I listen to. I just listen to it for the emotional, impact. But then if something really gets to me, I have to figure out, what it is.
That's understandable. Was Medford, where you grew up, was it a culturally interesting place?
Not necessarily. There are two towns that we're in between. Ashland, where there's a college, Southern Oregon State University it's called now. When I was growing up, it was called Southern Oregon College, SOC. And then Jacksonville, Oregon, where it's a 100-year-old classical festival called the Britt Festival. A guy named Peter Britt, who was the founder of the festival 100 years ago in our valley. And I used to go there to see concerts, and ended up getting to play with a 80-piece orchestra there, which was fucking incredible.
At what age?
Huh?
At what age? When?
It was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
it was kind of recent. Yeah.
Relatively recently. Yeah. A friend of mine is on the board, and he said, "Hey, we had this guitar player from the Rogue Valley who, is good, and he'd be perfect for this." So I did a Leonard Bernstein concert with them. The conductor is a guy named Teddy Abrams. He conducts the Louisville Symphony Orchestra, I believe. And he comes every summer to Oregon, and he's the music director of the Brit. It's BRITT Festival Orchestra. Yeah. And there was a piece by Mason Bates called Mothership, and there's a guitar solo. So they pegged me for the guitar solo. And Mason, I was very flattered by this. Mason, the composer, was there for the piece. Yeah. And he said, "God, I wish we'd had you for the world premiere. That was so much better than the guy that we had." And I said, "I watched the concert, with the guy you had. He didn't play the modes. There were these these pentatonic blues. These they were, I think, Lydian blues scales or something. Like, there were these weird lines that modes that the solo was based on, and this guy just was jacking off playing random rock bullshit through a Marshall, and I was like, yeah, he didn't even get into the spirit of the piece. You know, of course, when I'm going to do something like that, I practice my ass off and I learn, you know, where it's going to go and what I'm going to, you know, to develop. So the only thing that bummed me out was Teddy Abrams insisted that I sit up in front of the orchestra, and I just wanted to sit in the orchestra with you know, because when I did the Bernstein concert, I had a harpist here, an English horn player here, and a piano right behind me, and I felt like I was in the mother's womb in the middle of an orchestra. It's the greatest feeling ever. It's so goddamn cool. He's like, no, you're a soloist. You're sitting up in front, and we're gonna have a spotlight on you. I'm like, no, man, no. He was like, yes, you are. So I had to sit there, you know, the whole time in front of all these people, my family and friends, but it was a great experience. Really cool.
Did you have friends at school that were comparably into music? Friends that maybe helped you and inform you about what's hot or what's not?
One friend of mine there were a couple friends of mine were musicians. They played in cover bands in high school. Before I even started, I didn't start playing guitar till I was 17 years old. And a friend of mine's, God, I'm drawing a blank. Sandy Wilson. He changed his name to like Sandin or Sandrin or something. He plays in a band called Quarter Flash, which is from Portland, Oregon. They had a hit back in the 80s. And another friend of mine, Kent Murdoch, was a guitarist in a cover band. And that's where the first time I heard, you know, not the first time I heard, but the first time I heard at a school dance or whatever, they played Mother Freedom by Bread. And I was like, that is the coolest song. But I wasn't really thinking about myself as a musician yet, you know. Everybody, but because my name is Page and Led Zeppelin was my favorite band in high school, everybody called me Jimmy, of course. So that was kind of, and friends would tease me about, you're going to be a rock star one day, you know, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah. You know, I just knew that that's what I was going to do, you know.
But I mean, you started your formative teenage years when the 70s had started. It's a decade of change. While in the early 70s, the huge classic rock bands ruled. Most of them kind of lost their mojo by the mid-70s.
Yeah.
By then, soft rock, yacht rock, MOR and AOR ruled the airwaves.
Yeah.
Soul and funk artists moved towards disco. Then in the niche, electronic music and synthesizers prepare to overthrow conventions. While by 1977, punk sets off for a revolution. How did you experience the 70s?
I started playing guitar in 1977. I got my first acoustic guitar. And the first song, I had a guitar teacher, Dennis Flenner, in my hometown at a music store. And he taught me a Marshall Tucker song. I didn't even listen to Marshall Tucker, but there was sheet music for it. And it was just like 3 chords. And I said, I want to learn Stairway to Heaven. He's like, that's too hard. I can't teach you that. So I fired him, and I got another teacher named John Sorensen. And John was a local jazz guy. And he's like, do you like jazz? And I'm like, yeah, mom and dad's music. Yeah. And then he turned me on to Grant Green. And then I got my mom a George Benson album for her Christmas one year. And little did I know that it would draw me in, because I hadn't heard guitar like that before. But I think I went a little off track, right? I forgot what the question was.
How did you experience the 70s?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I was obsessed with music. So when my family was, my brother and sister, mom and dad were in the living room, in the family room where the TV was. After school or whatever, they'd be watching The Love Boat and Fantasy Island and all this crap on TV. And I would go in the living room and turn the lights off and put on a record and then which was in the room that they were in. I'd put the record on, and then I'd go in the other room and put my head next to the speaker, and it was all about Led Zeppelin. I remember listening to In the Light in 1975, and just hearing that keyboard, all that droney synthy stuff. It was so damn cool. And so I wasn't when punk came out at first. I was like, yeah, all right, it's okay. It's not Led Zeppelin or, I really loved Aerosmith. I had that all on. I had 8-track tapes in my car. I put in an 8-track tape player, and I had Aerosmith Rocks, and that was the last album they did was Draw the Line, and then they broke up kind of, and then they got frontal lobotomies and turned into some cheeseball band. But those first 5 albums I loved, and then I heard AC/DC. I was 19, my freshman year in college, and I heard AC/DC and Van Halen. And I liked Van Halen, but I loved AC/DC. I was like, what in the fuck is this? Like, it was Highway to Hell was the first song I heard. And it blew my mind. It was so scary. Yeah. And it's like, this is incredible. So I was still a rocker, but then I decided, I was in college, and I decided my freshman year, I was just flunking out, partying, drinking, and damaged my hand trying to smash a fire glass to get a fire hose out of it in the dorms, and they had to take me to the hospital and stitch my hand up, and I was just an idiot. And my dad said, I'm not going to help you with college anymore, because I was on academic probation, and the dorms sent my family a warning letter. If he fucks up again, he's out. And so Dad, when I came home, he called me one morning really early it was a payphone down the hall, and somebody woke me up. He's like, your dad's on the phone, he doesn't sound happy. And he said, get in your car and be home by noon. It was a 150-mile drive. So I had to I was like, oh shit. So I went to his office, and he said, he was splitting college with me. I was working, and I was paying my way too, but he said, I'm not going to help you out anymore because you're a complete jackass or whatever, which I was. And but I had already started taking guitar lessons from a guy at the university, and I asked, I think Gary Hagberg is his name. He's kind of my main mentor, motivation. And I asked him, I said, hey, you know my skill level. I haven't been playing for very long. Can I be a musician? He's like, if you want to do it bad enough. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So he said, all right. So he said, when you do your summer job in Medford and come up here, twice a month during the summer, and we'll do lessons. And then you're going to go to Lane Community College, which is the local community college in Eugene, Oregon. And take all the music classes, because I didn't know how to read music. I didn't know anything. I didn't know, what middle C was. So I did that, and I got straight A's, because all I did was practice and study and work. And then I auditioned at the university 6 months into my time at the community college. You have to audition on. So I auditioned on jazz and classical guitar, and I got in on both. And and then it started, And when I told my father that, he said, when he said he was cutting me off, he said, well, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna be a music major. And he to this day, I still laugh about it. He goes, bullshit. I'm like, thanks, Dad. Thanks for the support. Yeah. But then when we got a gold record and a Grammy nomination, I gave them both to Mom and Dad. They were very happy. I said, hey, you followed through.
There's a band that you mentioned in the very beginning. So like a gazillion of other rock musicians like Buzz Osborne or Danko Jones or Rivers Cuomo, you seem to have been a fan of Kiss in your 70s. At least that's how I interpret why you covered Calling Dr. Love on a tribute album called Pure Fire, the Ultimate Kiss Tribute,
right,
from 2018. So is that your favorite Kiss song?
Oh, I think God of Thunder is my favorite song by them. And to be honest, I'm not like a massive Kiss fan. My cousins played it for me, and it sounded like nothing I'd ever heard because, Kiss wasn't necessarily on the radio in Medford, Oregon. And my cousins, as I said, they'd play the Beatles, Monkees, Jim Croce, and Kiss. And I was like, wow, this is kind of scratchy. The guitar is kind of scratchy, and it's pretty cool. The Bob Kulick, may he rest in peace, was one of the guitarists. His brother Bruce played with Kiss.
Yeah.
He asked me. I had moved to L.A. after my divorce in New York, and I'd kind of given everything up, my house and stuff in Woodstock, and he was offering me $1,000 to sing and play in these tribute albums. And so I was like, yeah, I need the money. I'll do it. So that's kind of why I did it. Okay. And that was the song he wanted me to do. So it was really fun. They're fun songs. They're very well, written songs. They're not the world's greatest players, but they're well-written songs. I became friendly with Gene. In fact, my girlfriend and I saw him on a hike. I ran into him on a hike a couple of months ago in Fryman Canyon in L.A. with his dog. And he told 2 big dick jokes within like 30 seconds. My girlfriend was just rolling her eyes. She's like, oh my God. I'm like, I know, that's Gene. Yeah.
But coming back to playing guitar, when you started playing guitar and when you at some point were getting better, did you start trying to start a band with friends or something?
Yeah,
I mean, was there anything before you later on started playing in real bands?
Yeah, in college I started a band, and it was with a buddy of mine, Craig, a drummer named Tom, and I can't remember the bass player's name, to be honest with you. We had a stupid name that Craig wanted to name the band, Twist and the Ups, and we covered Clash's, cover of Brand New Cadillac. We covered Murder by Numbers by the Police. We covered, I'm trying to think what else. Damn it. And then I'd written a couple of kind of jazz fusion kind of instrumental pieces. We did those. And we had a guitar mayhem section, and Tom, our drummer, wanted to stand on his drum throne and read from the Communist Manifesto. So that went over well at the frat parties. We only played a couple of gigs, and then we kind of split up. Sadly, when I started to do well and tour the world and stuff, Craig never supported me. He was very jealous. It was an unfortunate thing, because I'd be happy for my friends if they were doing what they loved, Yeah. But in high school I didn't have a band because I didn't even play until I was a senior in high school. So,
but where did the jazz fusion pieces come from that you wrote? Was that something new that you were getting into?
Yeah, I mean, I was getting turned on to stuff like "Bitches Brew" by Miles Davis, "Return to Forever." I loved Stevie Wonder, and he has that song "Contusion," that instrumental on Songs in the Key of Life. So I just thought guitar lines and come up with chords, and I was always writing. I wrote a lot, and I just really had a kind of love of creating my own thing,
For studying guitar, you moved to Portland. It's a 4 to 5 hour ride by car, about 300 miles away from your hometown. I guess.
No, I never studied in Portland.
You never studied in Portland? Then the interwebs is wrong.
Yeah, I have a mentor there, John Stoll, but he came to Eugene. He's from Connecticut originally. He studied with a guy named Link Ray, a brilliant guitarist from the Northeast who passed away from cancer. And we were talking about cancer earlier. And John came and did a clinic at University of Oregon, and I just fell in love with his playing.
Okay.
And then he worked with a guy named David Friesen, great jazz bassist, and a jazz singer named Nancy King, who was the wife of Sonny King, who was an alto player from Oakland, California. Mm-hmm. And Sonny was trying to get off Smack, so he moved to Eugene.
Okay.
And so there were all these amazing musicians in Eugene, and there was this hot scene. And I was just a dork, little 18, 19, 20-year-old dork, and I'd go out and see these people play, and I saw John, and I started doing lessons with him. But he would come to Eugene.
Okay, I thought that
Or maybe that's
yeah.
what they're talking about.
So you never moved to Portland?
No, I was born there, but I've never lived there.
Yeah.
Since my mom and dad left in 1960, before my sister was born. She was born in 1964 in Medford. So
okay, and so those musicians that went to Medford when you were 18, 19, did they turn you on to jazz also? Like, did it help that they were around, and did they show you?
It was the people in Eugene. There was a jazz pianist named Barbara Monteith. Mm-hmm. There was a guy named Gary. Oh man, God, he was good. Oh, there were a couple of guitar players. Mike. God, I'm drawing blanks. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It would have been 1980. Something before I came to Germany. And they turned me on to a lot of stuff. I got invited a couple of times because I was the nerd kid hanging around to a couple of after parties, after gigs, and they would put John Coltrane records on. And there's a saxophonist named Warren Rand. I'll never forget. He played with Robert Cray, and he was just a monster alto player and just the funniest guy. And so I found all the really great players were really welcoming and really made me feel like I belonged, even though I sucked, And some of the players in school would be assholes to me, And there was a guy, I'll never forget his name, Tom Smith. He was a tenor player. And there was a jazzathon at the student union. And so I went, it was a 24-hour jazzathon, and anybody could come and sit in. So I went there at like 3 a.m. when nobody would be there. And I dragged my ES-175 and my Polytone Mini Brute over there from my apartment and sat in and just sucked. And the guy told me I sucked. So I remember walking home. It was light out. I ran into one of my best friends from grade school, John Cooney, who I love like a brother. He's a retired FBI agent, just an incredible guy. And he was running, and he's like, "Paige, what's going on?" I said, "I just played in the jazzathon." So he carried my aunt for me and walked me home, and I was really depressed. And so I put on a Jim Hall record and started to transcribe the song called "You'd Be So Nice to Come Home To," which is a song I'm going to do on my solo jazz album that I'm working on.
Okay. Was there a point where you started buying jazz records because you more and more got into that?
Yeah, they had back then they had the vinyl they had a thing called the nice price, which was $4 for a record. Yeah. And once a month I got a job at the bank working after hours. I was called a proof machine operator. First I was a qualifications clerk, and I worked my way up. And there was a mall record store where actually X did an in-store once. Yeah. I didn't know who they were. I walked in and I was like, "Hey, who are these people?" It's like with this streaky hair and all this stuff. And I was a total jazz nerd at that point. I didn't listen to rock at all. Yeah. And I dropped Led Zeppelin. I dropped everything because it was all about jazz. And once a month I'd save up and I'd have $5, $4 to buy an album. So I'd buy Miles Smiles, Kind of Blue, the Ellington Coltrane album, Love Supreme, all those kind of records. But I'd spend a month with it and just listen and try to figure out, licks and stuff.
Yeah. As metal or indie rock or pop, jazz comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. How did you enter that multiverse? How did you find out what's the right kind of jazz for you? Or because like Miles Davis is not Dixieland.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Gary Hagberg, my teacher, told me a couple of albums to get, and then I studied with a guy named Spencer Barton. When Gary went, Gary actually came to Germany to do a sabbatical in Tübingen, and I spent a month in Tübingen on my exchange program because that was the beautiful village, whatever, with the university there. But he said, "You're going to study with this guy Spencer now." and so I studied with Spencer, and he was a total like hardcore bebopper, you know.
Yeah.
And he said he played me a Lazy Afternoon by Grant Green with Elvin Jones on drums, and he's like, "What's the time signature?" And I was like, trying to count it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I go, I don't know, is it 3/4? He's like, no, it's 5/4. And I was like, oh, you asshole. He's like, easy. You know, and I'm like, but he had a John Coltrane photo or poster up in his apartment where I went for my lessons. And I have had a John Coltrane, 2 John Coltrane posters in my house since I don't even remember when I moved to New York in 1985.
Yeah.
And I got one. I got a poster at the Jazzmobile concerts at Grant's Tomb, and I've had it ever since. So,
you're a guitarist, and of course, jazz guitar is a thing. But when I think of jazz, I predominantly think of Miles Davis and Chet Baker and their trumpet, or Count Basie and Herbie Hancock and their piano, or jazz drummers like Art Blakey and Jimmy Cobb. But for me, it's not so easy to name jazz guitarists. I'd like to ask you, why is that, without you insulting me not knowing enough about jazz?
yeah. Why jazz guitarists are not as like world renowned? You mean as like Miles and Train and Charlie Parker and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me. It's not easy to name jazz guitarists that are as popular as the people that I just mentioned. Why do you think might that be the case?
I don't know.
Or am I just not knowing enough about jazz?
I think, Wes Montgomery became very popular. He did.
Yeah.
Some people criticized him for for doing those kind of poppy albums like A Day in the Life, where he covered a Beatles song or Sunny or things like that. But I was a little bebop snob at that time. And Spencer, I said something about George Benson, and who I loved when I first heard him. And then when I got into like Grant Green and Wes Montgomery and Jim Hall and those guys, I was like, George's kind of a sellout. And Spencer's like, you're completely wrong. George is one of the greats that actually made it. Mm-hmm. And so you can't begrudge a genius for playing pop music. George can play his ass off. He's probably the greatest living guitar player on the planet, in my opinion. And he can rip rhythm changes at 260 beats per minute, or he could play a super poppy, beautiful song like Give Me the Night, or Breezin'. Mm-hmm. And he rips. And I've seen him play several times, and he is incredible. He's just incredible. So he's massive, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I think it's, Jim Hall, his thing's a little more introspective, Mm-hmm. And it's the vocabulary is not, his vocabulary isn't about speed, or blazing lines or whatever. But Sonny Rollins relied heavily on him. Mm-hmm. He was Sonny's guy, and that's those albums that they did. That was a very unique sounding quartet.
Mm-hmm.
Bass drums, tenor and guitar.
Mm-hmm. Can you name jazz guitarists that actually had a heavy influence on you, that inspired you in your kind of playing?
Well, Wes is my favorite guitar player of all time. And I've transcribed, So Do It, the whole chart and the solo. I steal licks from him. I love Jim Hall. He's absolutely, a lot of my chord voicings when I play jazz come from him. On my jazz album, one of the tunes I'm gonna do is called "Careful." It's a 16-bar blues he wrote with this diminished bass melody. Another song I might do is George Benson's song called "Hello Birdie," which was on one of his early records in the '60s. And those are kind of my big three. Wes, George, and but I also love Pat Metheny. Yeah. I don't love everything he does, but his his stuff like 8081 or Bright Side's Life, his first album, Rejoicing, and I loved Pat Metheny Group. I saw them several times, and I've messed around with that song James, which is he can write the most poppy, beautiful melody, and then you dig into the chord changes, and it's like, what? They're so complex. Like, he's just on another planet. There's a song called Watercolors on his second album, and he plays the same melody, which is an A major triad, and then he lands on the sixth, the F sharp, and he plays the melody 3 times in a row.
Okay.
3 times in a row, and the chords are different all 3 times. He reharmonizes it every single time. And then the solo changes are completely different. It's still D major-ish, but he plays these sus chords, suspended fourths they're called, chords. It's just genius. I mean, he's a freak. He's an absolute freak. Like, and I've seen him several times.
Yeah.
I recently, we played in West Virginia, and a Pat Metheny's guitar tech, whose name I can't pronounce. I have his phone number because he left his business card for my merch guy, and he said Pat's a huge fan. And I literally got on the tour bus, and I was like, had tears in my eyes. It's like, Pat Metheny like listens to Helmet. I was like, holy shit. He's a huge influence on me. Like I say, some of the stuff gets a little bit too, I don't know, not poppy, but folky for me at times, but I dig why he's doing it, and I dig like where he went with it. He took triads and took him to this new place that nobody had ever done anything like that before. And I love Mike Stern a lot. I saw him play with Miles, which was mind blowing. And I saw him play at a place called 55 Christopher. It's a little bar in downtown in the West Village. And that was incredible. I love a guy named Kurt Rosenwinkel. There's a guy named Jonathan Kreisberg who's ridiculous. Adam Rogers is another jazz guitar player he's just, these guys are, John Scofield. I saw John Scofield with Miles when I moved to New York. And Robin Ford played with him, with Miles, that same concert. These guys are other level, but there's something about Wes that just clicks and connects with me. I'm a simple man, I love the complex stuff, and Kurt Rosenwinkel is a great teacher. Like, he has a lot of instructional stuff online. It's some of it's so brainy though, and it's like, whoa, okay, I need a little bit of home base, and Wes had that, and he swings so hard. I love his tone. I think he has the best guitar tone ever.
Just quickly help me out with the timeline. So you never went to Portland to study. We got that.
Yeah.
But when exactly did you go to New York? And did you go to Tübingen/Stuttgart before you went to New York?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you basically started studying in Stuttgart or in Germany then?
Well, I started studying in, would have been, let's see, I went to Stuttgart in Tübingen, Baden-Württemberg in 82.
Yeah.
And I graduated high school in 78. So 78, I started college. 79, I started studying in Eugene.
Okay.
So I'd been studying for a couple of years in Eugene, and then they had this exchange program, and my cousin, the same cousin Rhonda, who turned me on to the Beatles and the Monkees and the Kiss, was taking a German class when we were kids. Yeah. We were little kids, and she was in high school already. And I'm like, what's up with that? She's like, oh, I just wanted to learn a foreign language. I was like, that's weird. I said, and then I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn German because guess what? Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Schumann, Schubert, all that's the beginning of modern music, and I'm going to learn German, and I'm going to go. And then they had this exchange program, and I told my mom and dad I got accepted. I'm going to go. So I went, and then I had a classical teacher named Harold Volt, who I had written out one day I'd written out the Andre Segovia scales, are very specific classical guitar scales for the way to finger them, where to move and slide. So I figured out a way to write out the Segovia scales for a diminished scale, which is a half step, whole step scale. It's a symmetrical scale. And I took it in proudly to Harold and showed it to him. And he said, "Ich spiele kein Jazz." And I was like, what? This isn't jazz. This is music, And like, I was just blown away that he was so close-minded. It was like everything had to be classic. There was a thing in 1982 in Germany. I went to the Musikhochschule in Stuttgart. And I was at the university in Stuttgart. That's where our exchange program was. But I wanted to study music too. So I had to go by myself away from the program, go to the Musikhochschule and say, "Hey, I'm a student from America. I want a classical teacher, and I want to take classes here." Yeah. So it was extra work, but I had to do it. I just wanted to. And it was great. But there was a thing back then, I think in formal classical education, they weren't really as open to jazz and stuff like that yet, And in fact, I did ear training with a girl. It turned out she just wanted to date me, I think. Sabina. I want to say her name was Sabina Eberspecher or something like that. But she invited me to her house because she had a piano and we were going to do ear training. But it was really weird because it was like her mom and dad and her little brother. And we had this very formal lunch. I was like, okay, meeting this family. I'm just here to do some ear training. So they were lovely, really lovely. But then we went in and did ear training. And after about an hour of that, you're pretty bored. You're like, okay, name this interval, name this chord color. And I said, let's play some music together. She's like, what could we possibly play? You're a jazz guitarist and I'm a classical pianist. And I'm like, well, she had Chopin up there. And I go, look at that chord. That's a D minor 9, arpeggio. I'll play a D minor chord. You can play those notes over the top of this D minor chord, But she said, whenever I would do that as a kid, my parents would come in and say, stop horsing around. Get back to your lesson, whatever. It's very funny, interesting.
But how was it being in Germany? Did you get new insights into different or foreign musical worlds?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thomas Horstmann was my jazz teacher here. He was in Tübingen, and I didn't get to study with him that often because Tübingen and Stuttgart are, it's not a stone's throw. You have to get on the train. Yeah. And his wife was an American girl. I can't remember her name. She was a great singer, but she sang with Bobby McFerrin. I went to see that concert here, and I'd never heard anything like that. She did a piece with Harold, my guitar teacher, that it was 15 pages spread out on a music sheet, and it was like, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but it's interesting, Yeah. And then I got turned on to Karl-Heinz Stockhausen and stuff like that. I went to see the opera in Stuttgart. I went to the ballet in Hamburg a couple of times. It was great. It was an amazing experience. I did a jam session. There's a place called Der Brudler in Stuttgart, and it was downtown. And so I just walked in with my guitar, and it was a jam session, and I met a friend who's now a lifelong friend. He's a journalist, works for Associated Press. Mm-hmm. He's been in war zones, and his name is Chris Burns. But he's a singer and guitar strummer. And I tried to start a band, and there was a bass player, and I said to the bass player, we want to start a band. He's like, I don't have time. I have a girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, well, loser.
But if there's a genuinely original sound that comes from Germany, it's what the Brits named krautrock. Bands that didn't stick to the classical blues schemes, but bands that experimented, that went into avant-garde territory, that implemented early electronics or flirted with the jazzy improvised arrangements. Did you ever discover the vast and colorful landscape of those so-called krautrock bands?
I'm 100% positive that Neue Deutsche Welle, Deutsche Neue Welle, Neue Deutsche Welle.
Neue Deutsche Welle, NDW.
That's the beginning of New Wave. I mean, period. I saw Ine Data, Neue Männer braucht das Land. I saw Pudis. That was because I went to the Communist Festival in Dortmund, the Friedensfest. Yeah. I saw, God, who else did I see? Dang it. Well, I really love Bop, this band Bop. From I can't pronounce the album title. Schweizer Salzgebäckenbier or something like that. What was that great? That's Verdammt lang her. Such a great song. Udo. I got into Udo. I remember going to see shows. There was a club in Stuttgart called AZ. Mm-hmm. And it was, I also saw Lexus Corner there, which is a blues guy that Mick Jagger got to start with. I saw Barney Kessel, a great jazz guitarist who played with Charlie Parker. I just was very into music. I'm missing somebody that I saw back then. Dang it. God, there was a new wave band. Straßenjungs. I saw them. Straßenjungs.
Yeah.
Who's the band that had? It was a huge hit. Spider Murphy Gang. I saw all this.
Skandal im Sperrbezirk. Yeah, the song by Spider Murphy.
Yeah. So it was a whole new thing. I remember Ine Data and seeing the drummer had knee pads on and he had a Simmons drum kit. And I was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. Simmons are those pads, and it was so cool. I remember I saw Wolfgang Daune. He's a German jazz legend. Mm-hmm. That was great. I saw a lot of cool music. Yeah, it was. I also saw cool American music. Like I saw Don Cherry and Ed Blackwell with Shankar, Ravi Shankar. I saw James Blood Ulmer. Saw some stuff. I saw Leo Kottke. I saw Chick Corea with Gary Burton. I saw Tangerine Dream in Stuttgart. That was amazing. Yeah. Amazing. I was like, what is this? Like, what are they doing? Like, it was just crazy, Yeah. So important. Such an important band.
When exactly did you relocate to New York?
85.
85,
yeah.
Okay.
So I studied in Germany, 82, 83, got back home, finished my degree.
Yeah.
And I just knew I couldn't stay in Oregon.
Yeah.
I was really thinking about New York because that's where all my jazz heroes moved.
Yeah.
So I flew out and auditioned for Manhattan School of Music and got in and got a small scholarship and a work-study job, mopping the stage in the theater at like 6 a.m. But they had 2 giant grand Steinway 9-foot grand pianos, so I could just sit in there by myself and play, which is cool.
By the time you come to New York, the classic punk days of CBGBs are over. And while in other countries there's the new wave and post-punk happening in the underground, it's called No Wave in New York. So predominantly because of a compilation album named No New York that contained sounds by 4 different bands. People involved are saxophone player and band leader James Chance. Then there's Brian Eno, Arthur Lindsay, Lydia Lunch. Also, television emerged from that punk scene or art punk scene.
Yeah.
In 1980, on 99 McDougall Street, a label is founded called 99 Records. It gathers experimental composer Glenn Branca, funky bands like Bush Tetras, Liquid, and ESG.
Yeah.
And then there is a young band that call themselves Sonic Youth. Do you already know about all this before you hit New York?
No.
No.
Nope. Not until I got to New York. And I was in grad school and I was just, jazz nerd. And I was about to graduate and I just decided I'm going to just start auditioning for bands. Mm-hmm. So I went to Queens and auditioned for a band. I went to Brooklyn and auditioned for a band. then I was downtown East Village. There was a band I auditioned for, a couple of bands, and band of Susans, and they turned me on to Reese Chatham and told me about Glenn Branca. So then I saw Glenn Branca was holding auditions, and so I auditioned for him and got in to his group. And they turned me on to a lot of stuff, Wire and Killing Joke. Well, I found Killing Joke on my own, but Wire and Gang of Four, they turned me on to. And then I moved downtown in 87, I think. I was uptown in Harlem, in Dominican Harlem, because I was near my school. And I lived in a welfare hotel called the Clinton Arms. And then I got a bartending gig. And then I moved way uptown to Dominican Harlem. And that was too far. My bartending gig, I'd be coming home at 5 in the morning and the only white guy on the train. And it was just not healthy. I'd have like $200 in my pocket. And so I decided I better move downtown. And that's when I'd go to CB's all the time. And I'd see Tom Verlaine or Richard Hell or Iggy Pop. David Byrne. People would come into my restaurant that I worked at. I was a bartender at this place called The Levee. And it was crazy. Mark Ribot. Trying to think of people that I see either on the streets or just out and about. It was really weird. I once ran into Nick Cave on the street in front of Harris Books on 2nd Avenue. He was a total dick, but I was like, wow. We had just played Australia with them at the Big Day Out festivals, and so I tried to talk to him, and he just wouldn't even dignify my politeness with a response. I was like, okay, there you go, thank you. Nice to meet you too.
But 1998 is a massive year for you. After never having released music before, there is a lot happening in that year. So let's start with the band of Susans, a noise/indie rock band.
Oh, 88, yeah.
Or 88, yeah. So the band of Susans, they kind of mix noise and indie rock, and you play guitar on their second album, Love Agenda. How did you end up in that band and recording this specific album with them?
I auditioned. They were back then. The Village Voice was $1, and you could buy it, and that's where I found all these bands to audition for. And Robert. They had 3 guitars, and they got me in. I love them, and I learned a lot. I got turned on to Wire and Gang of Four through them. We did a cover of Essence Rare. But I had been writing, and I had Robert showed me how he did it with a drum machine and a 4-track, and he had a little, SM57, and I have a Super Champ amp. And so I started recording 4 tracks and learning to bounce. And I brought the songs to him, and he said, well, these are really good, but they're not right for a band of Susans. So that's when I decided to split. So I was in the band for, I think, maybe less than a year.
But was it kind of fulfilling? Because, at the age of 29, you finally recorded some music that was available in shops.
Yeah. It was, I think, later, like when Helmet kind of started to take off, Susan got kind of angry with me. She said something that I thought was unnecessary, but she said, when I left the band, that's when it was. And she's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to form my own band. She's like, we didn't need you on this record. We could have done it without you. And I was like, okay, well, now you can look. Yeah, I was like, nice, thanks. Now you can look back and go like, now you can say you have me on your album. So there you go. I bet you sell more. I would never say that, but I thought it.
But at some point that same year, you end up in the ensemble of avant-garde composer Glenn Branca. Yeah. It's a guitar orchestra with 10 guitarists, if I counted correctly. You are one of them, and you appear on Symphony 6 Devil Choirs at the Gates of Heaven. How did you end up in Branca's band? Same thing. I auditioned. He was looking for a guitar player, and I went in and played, and he hired me on the spot.
Yeah. Glenn was a brilliant guy, like very, very neurotic. I think he was a speed, kind of was hooked on speed. I'm not really sure, but that was the rumor. He had a temper, but he was writing music that nobody else had ever conceived. I mean, it was just fucking brilliant. And I learned so much from him. And Helmut is so influenced by those rhythms.
Yeah.
I've spent so much time on the subway, drumming out on my, 3 against 4. Then I start to do 5 against 4, Glenn loves 7 against 4. At the end of the first movement, there's a 1, 2, 3. Oh, what is it? He counts it 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, da do da do da do do da 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 do. So my right hand's in 7, my left hand's in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that stuff started just like permeating my soul. Like I could not. It was just really roped me in. And it probably started with Kashmir with Led Zeppelin, that feel, but then Glenn took it to another level for me, and yeah.
Can you remember how it was recording those long minimalistic songs where each guitar basically is there to just add a certain layer of sound or feedback sometimes?
Yeah, those days he didn't. It wasn't musical notation; it was his own notation. So he'd write a series of numbers, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and there'd be accents over the 1, and then it'd be a staircase shape. That was on a standard tuned guitar. The shape was a major triad, but on these guitars were all tuned to B and E. So he had really high strung guitars were sopranos. Then he had his soprano, alto, baritone, and bass, if I remember correctly. And those, you were just supposed to play these shapes. And if you play, if a guitar has all the same strings on it, and you play a shape that on consecutive strings like 1, 2, and 3, a fret apart, that's going to be a chromatic chord. So it's going to, logically, if it's all the same note and you play a half step up, that's a half step up. You play another half step up, that's, fret up, that's another half step. So what I learned was all that upper tertial stuff or upper harmonics happens when he liked the guitars clean. Like they're really clean. And we were playing Bang on a Can at this theater in East Village. And I went to take a leak, and I just wanted to run upstairs to the balcony and hear the band and to hear what it sounded like. And, and Glenn was cool with that. So I was sitting in the balcony. I was like, oh my God, it's creating like angel choirs and trumpets and all this harmonic stuff is happening. That's, it's generated by the harmonic, by the chordal shapes, but it's we know the overtone series, dum 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 da dum, the Zarathustra, thus spake Zarathustra or whatever, the Strauss piece. So every time you play a note, there are these fundamentals that happen above the note. And Glenn was taking that to another place. He was really, so that's kind of when people say, why do you play so loud in Helmut? I'm like, well, because all the harmonic information, this happens, this is really pleasing to me. That's not just the sound. If I play it on an acoustic, it's going to sound one way. If I play it on an electric, it's going to amplify all these harmonics. And it's fascinating to me. It's really satisfying.
Yeah. Also, in 1989, you find a couple of like-minded musicians to found a band called Helmut. And it's groovy, noisy, heavy rock with an edge. You record 2 songs for 7-inch with legendary New York hardcore producer Don Fury, which are released on, again, a legendary noise rock label, Amphetamine Reptile. Can you remember how the Helmet debut came about and what you were aiming for with that sound?
We recorded 4 songs, and those the two that Born Annoying and Rumble were the ones that Hazelmeyer wanted to put on the set for our first 7-inch.
Yeah.
So the others were Shirley MacLaine and Geisha to Go. Those were the same sessions at Donnie's. I'd just been writing, and I hadn't yet discovered the drop tuning thing, and that happened walking home one night. I was late at night up Avenue A. I was walking. I used to live in Stuyvesant Town. I rented a room, and I got this riff in my head for the first song of Strap It On called Repetition, and I picked the guitar up at 4 in the morning, and I was like, that note is a whole step lower than I'm hearing. Then the guitar is tuned E A D G B E. So I had to drop. So I said, if I lower the bottom string, it's going to give me that D.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it freed me up. But early on, I loved Husker Du, and Big Black. Trying to think, Gang of Four, as I said, Wire and Killing Joke, all those bands, and I loved Joy Division, and trying to think what else that. I'm drawing a blank. I think they just did shows. Jesus and Mary Chain.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just loved the noise. And I saw so many concerts. I was always going out and seeing shows, seeing bands like Undertones and, That Petrol Emotion, and just whoever I could see. I don't know. I just had this rhythmic sense and this harmonic sense that was kind of unique to me, I think. And the guys got it. They were into it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The symphony of Glenn Branca that you are part of, that got produced by a guy called Wharton Tears. And he also worked on records by Sonic Youth, Teenage Fanclub, Lunar Chicks, Unsane, and Dinosaur Jr., etc. And he is the one who takes care of you for Helmet's debut album, Strap It On.
Yeah.
That is released in 1990, and it has been influential on loads of heavy bands that want to be heavy but not sound like a traditional metal band.
Yeah.
So what made you go so heavy, tune the guitar to drop D and build in kind of hip-hop grooves sometimes?
I think it's a combination of I started that night walking home and I got that riff in my head. I started writing what I was hearing. So I was writing kind of motifs, riffs, thematic stuff. And I likened it to classical music, but in a simplified form where I'm not developing the idea. I'm repeating the idea to build tension, and then there's going to be a release. But if you think of, the greatest heavy metal riff of all time, dum bum 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 bum, it's the same idea, and it's I'm hearing these things before I pick the guitar up, and then I pick the guitar up, and sometimes I write them down. I'll notate it on a piece of paper, and then I'll put it in whatever key works with the tuning that we're using. So because I don't have perfect pitch, I have pretty good relative pitch, but. I don't know. I feel like we loved Sonic Youth, Rat R, Live Skull. We loved all those downtown bands that kind of came before us, but we also liked really heavy music, and I liked, I don't know. I thought playing those drop tune power chords, you can play these more complex lines and have it, be, root, fifth, octave, and it's just a great sound, And then I started experimenting with chords, like a song FBLA, where I was playing an F on fret 3, an F power chord with the top 3 strings open, so it's giving you a major 7 and a 9 and a sharp 11, but there's no third in the chord, and that kind of gave me this harmonic freedom. And it turned out the vocals were more rhythmic, really.
So, Paige, from now on, I'd like to go into some certain nerdier helmet details. But let's start with a pretty common thing. In 1993, you open up a legendary album. It's the amalgamation of the crossover generation, the soundtrack for the movie Judgment Night. So loads of bands of the alternative nation team up with en vogue hip-hop acts. You team up with House of Pain. Can you remember how your song Just Another Victim came about?
Yeah, absolutely. We were approached. We were one of the first bands, if not the first band approached. And I think the people that put it together maybe managed House of Pain and Cypress Hill. I'm not sure.
Happy Walters.
Yeah.
I think he's the producer of
Yeah. So that's accurate then. It was supposed to be a collaboration, and so we got to. They came to New York. They happened to be in New York for a show. I don't remember, but we went to Wharton's, the same basement that we recorded "Strappin' On" in Meantime in, and at that point, I believe Rob was in the band playing guitar, second guitar, and I had this riff. I had this great riff, we got all set up, got the bass and drums and guitar set up just as we always had. And we were a bunch of guys standing in the basement there. Eric and Lee and God dang, Tommy. I'm drawing blanks. I've met him, hung out with him recently, a couple years ago. Danny Boy. Yeah, so it was those guys, and I guess Happy. I mean, there were all these people. They had this entourage, and everybody just looked at me and said, "All right, let's write a song. What are we gonna do?" And I was like, "We're gonna write a song together, right?" They're like, "Yeah." So what are we gonna do? And I was like, I have this really great riff. I was saving for a Helmet song. Like we could mess with it. So I started the riff. My band hadn't even heard it yet. Mm-hmm. So I started playing it. And Stanier, being the amazing drummer that he is, comes in, and we start this groove. Yeah. And Henry jumps in. And I think Rob was in there too. I don't know if we had two. We used to record with just one guitar, bass and drums live in Wharton's basement. There were no gobos, but it was a long lengthwise. The drums were at one end, then the bass, and then the guitar at the far end. So there's plenty of bleed onto the mics. But yeah, we started the thing, and then I said, well, let's double time it, for the chorus. I'll go from here to bottom down, and I hear that stuff all the time. Like I said, I don't fish around. Like I don't pick up the guitar and fish around and try to come up with riffs. I hear it first, and then I play it. Mm-hmm. And then I heard those hits. So we recorded it and had it done in a couple hours, and gave it to those guys. Yeah. And next thing we know, we're in LA on tour, and they said, let's finish the song. And I talked to Eric, the singer from House of Pain, and he said, well, what are you thinking? And I said, I've had this idea about people feeling victimized and all these, this victim culture or whatever. Yeah. And he goes, oh, that works with what I'm thinking about. So I wrote my words just sitting in the control room and in the live room and kind of back and forth. And completely different styles of working, by the way. Like they had porno movies on. They had a giant bag of weed, like the biggest bag of weed I'd ever seen. And and we don't have a TV in a studio. We don't have we're just there to work. And it was hilarious. So then I did my vocal and I knocked it out. Like it took me a couple of takes, and it was done. And then they did their thing. They did the Lee slowed the riff down, and then Eric did his rap. Yeah. And it was fun.
There's a cover compilation from 1995 where loads of rock bands of the 90s do takes on Saturday morning cartoon themes. And you picked Gigantor, the theme of a black and white anime about a giant robot. Why that one?
They asked us to do that song.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't like
an obvious choice, like,
yeah.
Oh, well, let's pick that.
Sometimes they'll give you a couple of choices, and then they might have done that. But I think they just said we think Helmet should cover this. Like on the Guilty Pleasures thing, they gave us these choices of songs, and one was like Bon Jovi, and I hate Bon Jovi, and one was but they gave it. So we did that rock and roll Crazy Nights song. Is it Loudness? Is that the band? Rock and Roll Crazy Nights. You Are the Hero, Japanese metal band.
Okay.
And I didn't know them, but my friends did, and I thought, that's cool, I want to do that. But I think Gigantor, they might have just said, we want you guys to do this song.
Yeah.
So we went in.
There's even a video for that.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that at where John Lennon did Double Fantasy. I forget the name of the studio. Same studio, which was pretty awesome just to work there. Because I obviously worship John Lennon. And when we do a cover, oftentimes we rearrange it a little bit, as far as like that riff section I came up with, the bridge, the kind of funky riff. That wasn't on I listened to the Dickies version, and we used Helmet chords. We did it in drop tuning, and so those chords are going to be Helmet chords. Sometimes I'll add like extensions, but oftentimes it'll just be like root 5, root 5, root 5, root 5, to infinity, whatever. And then I do overdub upper chordal parts on the top 4 strings to get it to kind of open up in a chorus. But that was fun. That was a really fun song to record.
Yeah. For the Jerky Boys movie soundtrack, you covered the Black Sabbath proto-thrash metal song "Symptom of the Universe."
Yeah.
A great pick, but owning that album since the 90s, the Jerky Boys album since the 90s, I always wanted to ask, why exactly that song? Is it because the classic Shagga Shagga?
They gave us a choice, Ozzy had suggested War Pigs, and I'm like, it's been done to death. I'm like, no. And I was unaware of anybody covering Symptom at that time. And I just thought it's perfect for Stanier, like it gives him a chance to shine, and he did.
Sepultura also covered it later.
Yeah.
But there is another Sabbath cover that you did, Lord of This World.
Yeah.
Did you do both songs in the same session? And
no, I think we did Lord of This World before that. I can't remember what that was for. Like some kind of compilation, right?
Yeah, it ended up in some compilation.
Yeah. We'd been asked about that compilation, and I haven't heard that cover in a long time. I don't even know if it's good.
Yeah. Have you ever been a Sabbath fan? Because that's the band that you haven't mentioned yet.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love them. Yeah, I think Ozzy's like my favorite singers are Bon Scott and Ozzy, and obviously I love Robert Plant and Steven Tyler too. But Ozzy's a freak, and like I love Sabbath. So those are some of the best riffs ever written. I think Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, that song in particular, that whole album, but National Acrobat, all those songs. That's just an incredible album. Yeah. I got into Sabbath a little later, though, to be honest. I'm not going to say that I was, a teenager like I was when I got into Led Zeppelin and stuff. It happened after I'd formed Helmet. I think I got, I'd heard them, and I just kind of, my brain could only digest so much music, I think, back then. Yeah. And then I got, Stanier would listen to that stuff all the time. He loved Iron Maiden, and I grew to appreciate them. even though there's kind of cheesy, elements in it, but like, and I would tease him about that stuff. I'd tease him. He loved like Soundgarden and Iron Maiden and Rush, and I loved Rush too. I saw Rush, but I didn't really get into Soundgarden until much later.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just didn't float my boat back then. I think I was very determined to carve my own path.
Did Helmut ever make it to or play on an Ozfest?
No.
Okay, because
no, or we didn't. We were never invited to Ozfest. We were never invited to Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
We just weren't the cool kids.
But you
we
played
looked like a bunch of dorks.
The Warp Tour. You played, I think.
We did that later. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That was interesting.
And to stick with the classic rock thing, you did a take on Custard Pie for the Encomium Zeppelin tribute. You teamed up with David Yao from the Jesus Lizard. And it's a song from one of those highly ambitious 90s tribute records. How did you end up on there, and why did you cooperate with David?
Not sure who approached us, but again, we were one of the first bands they came to, and the initial idea, we were told, was to collaborate with someone. It wasn't just going to be a band covering a Zeppelin song.
Yeah.
And I think we were the only collaboration, right? Like I think Stone Temple Pilots did their own cover.
So there's Robert Plant and Tori Amos.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're like, well, Jesus Lizard had toured with Helmet. We love them. They're our brothers, and love Yao, and he loves Zepp. And I said, Custard Pie. I've always wanted to play that song.
Yeah.
We did that with Butch Vig, and we did it at the Power Station. That's where we recorded Milk Toast for the Crow, as well with Butch, and it was just awesome. I told the band, learn the song, and we went in and. I told Butch to roll tape, and we did it live. We never rehearsed it, not once. We played it live. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba-na-na. I start the song off, and we did one take, and Butch is like, that was great. I'm like, good, done. Time for the vocals. I was very proud of that. We never rehearsed that shit once. Just fucking went in and did it, man. That's a good band. That's a really good band.
Yeah. There's also a Solidarity compilation called Mom, Music for Our Mother Ocean.
Yes.
And there's lots of surf songs and covers on there. And then there's Helmut covering Björk's Army of Me.
Yeah,
is Björk an artist that left an impression on you? Because she was so...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that album. I love Post. I love her work. I didn't know the Sugar Cubes. And then I found... kind of discovered them after that, but it's just so heavy. Stanier turned me on to a lot of cool stuff, like hip hop stuff and drum and bass stuff. He listened to a lot of that. Henry listened to a lot of Hawaiian music and country music because he likes the lap steel, and I listened to a lot of classical music and jazz. And so we have very different tastes, and I think it makes for a great, So yeah, we did that one with Dave Sardi, who's amazing producer, one of the first people that I worked with that was truly active as a co-producer, because I've produced all the Helmet stuff from day one, and don't get credit for any of it, but I didn't want it to be about me, so it's always credited to produced by Helmet or whatever.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like, John and Henry, came up with their parts. I would have ideas, and I would have this drum groove has to be straight, 4 like this, but then Stanier would do his thing with it, and so they get credit, for being great musicians, great bandmates, but. Yeah, that was fun. That was really fun to do the Björk thing. We do it live sometimes. We've had so much time off, 5 months off, that we're kind of easing, stuff back into the set.
Yeah.
So, we'll.
So recording that song with Dave Sardi, I bet that you also that it went well together with him, because I think that you are probably a fan of his band Bark Market, or because I think they are in in a similar league somewhere. I mean, noisy rock.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah. He's one of the most underrated. That Bark Market is one of the most underrated bands ever.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. And a huge leap forward to The Problem of Leisure, a celebration of Andy Gill and Gang of Four. On that tribute, you cover that abrasive, angular post-punk song In the Ditch from Gang of Four's second album, Solid Gold, from 1981. Is that a band that you listened to back in the day? I mean, if Gang of Four wouldn't be from Leeds, they could as well have been part of the New York no-wave movement, kind of.
Yeah, Robert Poss turned me on to them. From Band of Susans, and because we did I think I mentioned it earlier. I found that Essence Rare from Entertainment, I believe, and Henry Rollins released on his label, did re-releases of, I believe, Entertainment and Solid Gold, and I wrote liner notes for one of them. I think Solid Gold. So that had to happen in like the mid 90s because we toured. Well, I didn't meet Rollins until 94. We toured together. I loved Gang of Four. I mean, they're just epic. I listened to the shit out of those albums like over and over and over again. Those first two albums are just so goddamn good. I like the later stuff too, Man in Uniform and with Sarah but I really that original 4-piece was just phenomenal. I got to meet Dave Allen, hang out with him because he works with a guy I used to hang out with in LA named Rick Boston. They had a band called Low Pop Suicide, and he was the most humble, sweetest guy. And I got to meet Hugo because he tried to sign Helmet to Mago. I never met Andy, sadly, but I got a message when we sent him the track that he wanted all the tracks and he loved it. He was blown away, and that made me really happy. And then he passed away, so I never got to meet him. We were playing London, and then we had him on the guest list, and we were unaware that he was sick. Yeah. So I gave a shout out to him that night, and not knowing that he hadn't made it, that he was on his deathbed. So that was sad. The guy's fucking incredible.
Yeah. I know that you are quite an opinionated guy. I don't know if you would describe I don't know if you would describe yourself as that. And I know that there is lots of stuff that you don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
And I know that years ago you never got tired to tell everybody that you basically only listen to jazz. But there are, of course, a couple of bands that you admire. And there's one band that you kind of got obsessed by after you saw them live. You never listened to them on a record before, but you saw them live, you got introduced to them live. It's the Melvins. Yeah. Why did they have such an impact on you?
Rhythm, feel, it's I mean, the vocals are great. Obviously, Buzz and Dale, doubling each other is just perfect. I mean, it's just perfection. But I went to see him at the Pyramid Club. Yeah. And Peter Davis was our agent, and he was booking them as well. He's a guy that worked at a Creature Booking. And he had Your Flesh magazine in Minneapolis, and Hazelmeyer from AmRep. They collaborated with a lot of the bands. Like if Hayes put the album out, Pete often booked the band. So he said, I'm going to put you guys on the road with this band, the Melvins. And they were playing at the Pyramid. And I left my bartending job that night and went to see him, and I was falling over. I was just like, wow, like this is like, just to have that sense of time, is incredible. Yeah. It really is. I love them to this day. I mean, we've gotten to play so many shows with them, and 7 of us in one van. When Tom Flynn was playing bass with them, and for a month, and the snow drifts like up to our neck in Madison, Wisconsin, and Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I love them. We don't hang out. Yeah. Like we're not buds, but I have a great love for them as people. They're very unique as well.
Yeah.
You know, both guys are really interesting. You know,
Yeah.
we like my band was cracking up because Buzz and I are the two old guys, and so when we toured Australia together, he and I would be the first ones up and eating breakfast together and stuff. And he's unique, and Crover is he's a phenomenal drummer. You know.
While you in the studio in 1994 to record Hammett's third album, Betty, with Andy Wallace, Wallace is producing Jeff Buckley's album Grace on the side, and he informs you about it, and you really like Grace. So please explain to me what makes this album and this artist so special.
Well, I mean, like his melodic sense, his voice is incredible. It's almost like jazz. Like there's this freedom in his vocal ad lib and delivery that is to me is so inspired. And the arrangements are so perfect on that album. Every single song on that album is perfect. It's just like the drama, the musical drama, the sense of time and feel, and the his chords, the way he arranged Hallelujah, and Andy, I've read an interview with Andy where he's talking about that, where they were up in Bearsville, I believe, in Woodstock, New York, the great studio in Bearsville, and they'd been scuffling a bit. It wasn't going that great, and Jeff one night came up with this the arrangement of Hallelujah, and that kind of catapulted them into the stratosphere, and it sounds like no other artist. It's so brilliant. I wasn't familiar with his father until Jeff, until I got into Jeff, Tim Buckley, and I it's a great legacy,
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that Jeff didn't know about his father for a long time, I think.
Yeah.
And then later found out that actually this guy was his father, and that he was a very freewheeling singer-songwriter that got into jazz territory and avant-garde territory and whatnot. And
cool, right?
Yeah. Also, a band that you like are indie forerunners Pavement. Why is that?
God, I think they're so great. There's this kind of like casual looseness that, and the songs are catchy as hell, first of all, and I think they're really underrated as musicians as well. Like they play up sloppy, but to be how do I describe this? To play at being sloppy, you have to be really tight because they're not sloppy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're I just think, it's great. They're great songs. Yeah. They're just fucking great songs. Yeah. And I love them. I became friendly with them, with Mark and Steven at a festival was it in Sweden or Germany? I can't even remember. Anyway, great people, great band.
You did quite a bit stuff besides Hammett, obviously, and it started pretty early. Actually, in 1996, you released a record that was a kick in the balls for every Hammett fan. If you're not very open-minded. With Zulu Time, you recorded an abstract avant-garde noise record with a German guitarist, Kaspar Brötzmann.
Who's coming tonight?
Yes. So, and he's the son of jazz saxophone player Peter Brötzmann.
Yeah.
So what is the story behind Zulu Time?
One of my dearest friends on the planet is a guy named Stefan Hahn. He lives here in Berlin, in Kreuzberg. I was playing with Glenn Branca at the World's Fair in 1992, the year before Meantime came out. We'd finished Meantime, and I was playing the World's Fair with Glenn, and I did a press tour. So after after the Branca concert, I flew to like Amsterdam and London and all over Europe and did interviews in a hotel room all day, smoking cigarettes and like an idiot, and 8 hours a day of just interviews for meantime. I meet this girl Encana, and she speaks German. She's Spanish, and she's on our stage for the first Branca concert. She said, hey, I'm going out tonight. I have a friend from Germany, because I said, you speak German, and he's from Kaput, and he escaped, before the wall came down and everything, and and we just hit it off, and we sat on the wall there in Sevilla, talking about music and everything, and he gave me a cassette tape of this guy Caspar Brotzmann Massacre, and I crapped myself. I was like, wow. Like, this is the fucking real deal. And I said, so they found out, I started talking about him in interviews, and they said, hey, would you do a quote, for us? And I said, I'll do a quote if they'll come on tour with us. And so we took him on tour in Europe, and it went really well. We brought him over to the States, and it didn't go so well because Americans are morons. Like, I remember Nashville, people like Casper didn't understand what was happening. He had a piece of chewing gum on his boot, on his shoes. Thrones. Just assholes. Because we had that brief stint where we were an MTV darling, and so we had a lot of morons that watched MTV that got into the band, and that wasn't our core audience, and they didn't accept it. But I can't remember who came to us. And maybe Casper said, hey, we should do an album together. I'm like, hell yeah. So we went to Wharton's in New York. As Kim Gordon once said to me, because I told her I miss recording at Wharton's. And she said, yeah, it's kind of like the mother's womb. And I said, I know, it's just so comfortable there. We improvise. We just faced each other in the room, and we would, he would start one piece and I would start another piece. Yeah. And, he's just an incredible artist,
But I feel like that it was also, I don't know if it was a bit of a joke, but there is this 11-minute minimalist abstract track that is composed of dueling feedback, basically, and you named it Hit Single.
Yeah.
So
I know.
There is a bit of self-irony in there, right?
Yeah. He came up with a Zulu title. I came up with Hit Single and Schnellimbus. I just wanted. I had to call the song Schnellimbus. I just think it's like, I can't remember all the titles, but it was so much fun to make. We did it in a day, and Casper would be like, we'd do a couple of tracks, and he'd be like, Page, should we go to a bar and have a cocktail and get a mood? And I'm like, yeah, sounds good. So we'd take a little break. We'd go to a bar down the road, have a couple drinks. He was a vodka drinker, vodka and Coke, if I remember. It was just so much fun. I love him. I'm really excited to see him. He wanted to hang out today, but I'm just kind of, we were doing this, and I have sound check, and I didn't sleep last night after learning of my cousin, and so I said, just come after the show and hang out with us.
Another pretty weird record that you're part of is together with the Avantgarde-Orchestra. I'd call it Malumbo from New York City. It's called Fairy Tale Aliens. And you do a very freewheeling rendition of The Kings' You Really Got Me on there, and an almost a not recognizable version of the Hamlet classic in the meantime. What is this record about?
The first band I was in New York in the 80s was a band called Pros and Cons. It's another band I auditioned for. I can't remember what year I started with them. I think I might have still been in grad school. We had a studio out in Brooklyn in Greenpoint, I think, and just an old friend of mine, and when Helmet, I left the band after a couple of years because they never played a show, not once, and I wanted to play out, and they were recording all the time, and I learned a lot, but when I left and then I formed Helmet, I joined Band of Susans and I formed Helmet, and he started Malumbo, Rob, and I loved it. I went to see him play, and it was fantastic. It was our original singer from Pros and Cons, Ronnie, who, may he rest in peace, passed away, who played trumpet and was a great singer. He used to sing on cruise ships, because he could sing anything. It was just awesome dude. Ron Boggs. And John DiMaggio, who was the second cousin of Joe DiMaggio, was our bassist and engineer. And we had a drummer whose name I won't say because he's an asshole. But we fired him and got a second drummer who is Tony Fortuna, who's one of my best friends to this day, and he played in Malumbo as well. So it was just fun. I always wanted to record with them and do something with them, and it came. The opportunity happened, so we did it.
Yeah. In 1999, David Bowie releases the album Hours, and on the tour that follows, you're the live guitarist of his band. How the fuck did that happen?
I was in a downward spiral after having left my wife of 10 years, and just being an asshole and drinking and doing various substances and being a total jerk. And I had left my wife, and so I was staying at my manager's apartment in New York City. And one day, I came home one day after being out all night. I got home at like 3 in the afternoon. I'd pulled an all-nighter, and the phone rings, and it's in the apartment, so I pick it up, and everybody's like, "Where the hell are you?" And I was like, "I'm out. Like, I'm just out partying." And they're like, "David Bowie's trying to reach you." And I was like, "Yeah, right." They're like, "Serious? Like, what time can he call?" I'm like, I was going to quit smoking that day. So I'm like, I got to go get a pack of cigarettes. How about 5? So 5 o'clock on the nose, the phone rings.
Yeah.
"Hello, Page, it's David Bowie." I'm like, "No," I'm like, "No way." Anyway, he said, "I'd like you to play lead guitar with me." And I'm like, "Hell yeah." And he said, we don't, everything's not heavy and noisy. And I said, "I can play quiet and beautiful," or whatever. So that was it. Yeah.
But weren't you curious how he even knew you? I mean, not to be insulting, but I didn't imagine David Bowie listening to Hamlet, for example.
Well, I met him 2 years earlier at a festival in Germany, actually.
South Side Festival? No, that wasn't around then.
Started with an S, SCH. I guess. Anyway, I had known we were going to play at this same festival, and so I had a copy of Hunky Dory in my back pocket, and I was friendly with Reeves through my pickup guy who makes my guitar pickup, Steve Blucher from DiMarzio, and I saw Reeves and David in catering, and Reeves is like, he knew that I wanted to meet him, and I went over and talked to him, and David was so gracious. He's like, "Helmet, I love Helmet," and I started laughing. I'm like, "Yeah, right." And he goes, "We go way back," So he knew of me. He knew who I was, so 2 years later, I got the call.
Okay,
it was cool,
crazy.
I know.
How was it being on tour with such a superstar like David Bowie? I mean,
it was great. It was fun. I mean, it was. I had just left my wife, so I teased everybody that they're like, this is the No Groupie from Hell tour. I was like, you guys like they have these German girls with mullets that show up. There's no women, and I wanted to meet girls because I was I just been in a relationship for 10 years and it's being an asshole, whatever. But then nobody in the band drank or partied or did anything. I didn't drink until after the show, but. Yeah, it was David called me one day, Hangover Hamilton, because I would, after the show, I'd go tear it up and drink. The brother from the band The Corrs, CORR, Irish band. We were in Dublin.
Yeah, I think so. 3 sisters and
a brother.
Yeah.
And the sisters were kind of assholes, but the brother was really cool. And so I ended up hanging out with him in Dublin and drinking until all hours. And I was in the lounge at the airport waiting for, to board. And I had a newspaper over my face. And David came up behind me and put his arm around me and kissed me on the forehead. He's like, God, he's like, is Paige, you have a hangover? I'm like, yeah. We were in Paris. We were at Le Quart d'Or, this amazing hotel, and it had like 2 door entrances. It was like twice as big as my apartment in New York. And we had all this. We were on a TV show, and they had all this beer, and nobody drank. So I took all the beer, and I had 2 bags of beer, and I got on. I walked down the steps, and I go to get on the elevator at the hotel, and I turn, and who's on the elevator but David? And I put the bags down, and all I can hear is like our bottles like clank, 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 clank. He's like, oh God, Hangover Hamilton's at it again. And I was like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
I didn't tell them that I just left my wife or anything, that I was going through some shit. I didn't need to share anything with him. He called me his quiet one. He's like, Paige is my quiet one. And my mom was like, yeah, right.
But did you have to learn his whole catalog? Or
I learned
was it
30 songs in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so it was a lot. Yeah. And it covered a lot of, we did some Tin Machine stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We did old stuff. We didn't do anything off Ziggy, but we were in rehearsal one day, and one of the backing singers was in the bathroom. And so I started to play Ziggy, and everybody started kind of laughing, and then David's laughing, and then the whole band jumps in. And so we did the whole fucking song together with David sang.
Yeah.
And then, right, what's after Ziggy? Suffragist City. So I started Suffragist City. I started playing that. And these were not on my list of songs to learn. I just knew them.
Yeah.
So I started playing Suffragist City, and we did that.
Yeah.
So I got to play, Ziggy Stardust and Suffragist City with David Bowie at a rehearsal. And I was just like, we were so happy. Everybody was so happy. David too. He said, we're not going to do that until the anniversary or whatever, the songs.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
But that's a true fanboy moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was, I cried my eyes out when he passed. He was a special human being, not just an amazing artist and great singer and great songwriter, but just a very brilliant guy, sweet, really sweet,
But being such a master guitarist, is it easy for you to just play other people's music? I mean, can you just pick up a guitar, listen to something, and then basically strum along?
It depends on what it is. I mean, Bowie laughed about this because I told him one day we were sitting and I said, I'm not really a guitarist. Mm-hmm. He's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I said, I'm more of a shit sculptor. And he's like, oh God, stop it. I have a unique approach to the guitar, and I can figure most things out, but not everything. I mean, there's stuff that, Earth, Wind, and Fire, After the Love Is Gone. That I told my bandmates, anybody that can figure that song out, I can get $1,000. I can figure it out eventually, but it would take me a while. So many chords. It's transcribing is kind of part of what you do as a jazz guy, and everybody learns songs, that's how you kind of get your vocabulary together or whatever. But I can't play, I'm no, master guitarist. I'm still learning and practicing and working every day. I'm gonna when our label here, and we're in Berlin, our label in Hamburg said, hey, we want to put out your solo album, and I have a bunch of material that's already written. Mm-hmm. And then he said, and we have a jazz label, we'd like you to do a jazz record. I was like over the moon, and then I was like, oh shit, like I got some work to do. So, because everything I'm going to play is going to be either I've written it or transcribed it. I'm not going to just open up some book and play some jazz standard that the kids play in college. It has to be stuff that I transcribed or wrote. Mm-hmm. So it's work. It's hard.
While rehearsing with Bowie, you talk about Trent Reznor, a musician who defined the 90s with his band Nine Inch Nails, and another colleague that you appreciate. So please let me know why.
Trent, he's Bowie and I had this conversation in rehearsal one day, and he said he brought it up. He said something about Trent's got a great compositional mind, and I think Trent. I don't know if he's a great guitarist or a great keyboardist. I have no idea, but he's a great writer.
Yeah.
He the way he kind of constructs his music, and is just so it's so musical. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but unique and interesting. I mean, his use of all those sounds and things that he's developed and stuff. That is part of the industrial music vocabulary now. It's like you can't buy a sample CD and not hear Nine Inch Nails, things that like Trent came up with. So he's got a great ability to sort of create textures and sounds, and he can write, and his vocal range might be 2 octaves for all I know. I have no idea, and he uses it brilliantly. Yeah, just like he's just a great writer.
Yeah, Reznor at some point started scoring movies and TV programs, and so do you since the early 2000s. You worked on scores for In Dreams, Titus, Underworld, the God Thief, SWAT, The Tempest, and most of them in cahoots with composer Elliot Goldenthal.
Yeah.
Is the score work enjoyable for you?
Yeah, it can get a little tedious. I'm the last thing I just finished is what's the title in German? Totenfrau. It's on. It's a Netflix show. Totenfrau. It's an Austrian show. Anna Maria Mühe is the star. Yeah. I played on season 1, and I'm on season 2, and they actually are giving me credit on screen this year.
Yeah.
So when it opens up next year in 2025, I think the first episode for season 2, I'm going to see, music composed by Patrick Kierst, who's a dear friend of mine from Karlsruhe, who lives in LA and teaches at USC. And then it's kind of, featuring Page Hamilton guitar. So it's hard work. Like you have to put in a lot of time, and it's fun. I think I've done a lot more session work in that way than I have composing scores. I probably only scored about 7 or 8 films myself. And the last one I did was such a bad experience, I quit. There were these mafia guys from Hong Kong, and they were ripping us off. So I just said, nah, I'm not doing it. So the good news is a lot of the material that I wrote is going to be on my first solo album. So, because I have all this music, but it's fun. Elliot, I learned a lot from Elliot. Yeah. Elliot's a genius. Yeah. I mean, no question. And I think one of the most underrated scores he did was In Dreams. It's when Elizabeth Fraser is on from Cocteau Twins, who's fucking incredible, is on a song I did. We didn't meet because obviously you go in and you do your tracks and then they come in. I did meet Bono when we did The Good Thief. I wanted to be there for his vocal session, and he was very, very complimentary. And he said something. He's like, this guitar is amazing. I can't do his accent, but his Irish accent, but it's got comedy and pain. And I'm like, mostly comedy. And he didn't laugh. And I was like, oh, well.
I'd like to finish with a question about a band that had a fanboy moment inviting you into their studio, I think. Because in 2014, Linkin Park invited a couple of musicians they admired to play on their album The Hunting Party.
Yeah.
There's Tom Morello, Darren Malakian from System of a Down, and then you on the track All for Nothing. How did that come about?
Same thing. Somebody called my manager and said, "Hey, Linkin Park wants you to sing and play on a song." And so I said, "Sure."
Yeah. Was it like immediately like, yeah, of course I'm there? Or was it like, I don't know.
I don't remember. Yeah, I think so. I met Chester at NRG Studios years and years and years ago. He came outside to smoke a joint, I was standing outside, getting some fresh air or whatever. We chatted for a second. So they were working while I was working. I think I was producing Gavin Rossdale's solo album, Institute.
Yeah.
And or I was doing some Helmet stuff. I don't remember, but they seemed like nice guys, and invited me to play. And little did I know that the pedal board, the rig that I have here in Europe now, that lives in Prague, with our gear, was so the patch bay was broken. Mm-hmm. So some of the sounds I did, I couldn't get, So I just played these chords, and we just played with them in Dallas, Texas, and I did the song live with them. And Mike Shinoda, the leader of the band, was like, what are those chords you're doing? And I'm like, it's a long story. It's just expanding the harmony,
Page, vielen Dank, dass du dir die Zeit genommen hast. Vielen Dank für das schöne Interview.
Bitte schön. Es hat mich gefreut. Das war unheimlich viel Spaß.
Dankeschön.
Danke. Cool.
Dankeschön. Okay. Liebe Zuhörerinnen, Zuhörer und alle irgendwo dazwischen, wer auf dem Laufenden bleiben möchte und neugierig ist, in welcher Situation das Gespräch stattgefunden hat, darf gerne den Instagram-Kanal des Visions Magazins abonnieren oder meinen persönlichen unter Jan Schwarzkamp oder selbstverständlich gerne beide. Und wer das Online-Abo von Visions Plus abschließt, kann den Podcast übrigens immer schon exklusiv vorab hören. Bleibt gesund und bleibt mir treu. Wir hören uns dann hoffentlich bei der nächsten Episode von Der Soundtrack meines Lebens wieder. Bis dahin, euer Jan Schwarzkamp.